Hello, Surviving Change audience. Welcome to another show. Today, we want to talk about what the end brings when you get into retirement or when you're getting close to retirement. Now, I know you've heard me talk about retirement on several other shows and getting towards the end of my career in education. But the reality is that that step, that process, is something that we can only imagine how it would be. We can set ourselves up and we can make plans, but will things always go according to plan? I don't know. I'm not there, but I would like to introduce you to someone who is there. Welcome my guest, Sonya Atkinson.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. I'm glad that you're here. And just a little bit jealous. Would you share with our audience how long you've been retired?
As of today, I've been retired 9 days.
Okay.
It's not very long, but it's a start.
Yes. And has it been everything that you thought it would be so far?
So far, it has been. I was sharing with a friend earlier today that next week I would have gone back to work because I'm now a district level employee, so I don't get the whole summer off. I only get maybe 7 days. So it's everything that I thought it would be, especially this time of year, knowing that I don't have to go back to work tomorrow.
Okay, that's pretty awesome. So, of course, I could allow you to revel in everything that you thought it would be, but we don't want to do that at this time. We just want to talk about your steps in getting there. I know you and I have talked about retirement and the process and how long it would be before we would retire. But let's talk about the past year and a half, where you had to contemplate whether, taking this new position, knowing that you were ready to walk out the door.
That was this whole year has been back and forth for me in terms of, do I retire, do I stay? And the reason why I was going back and forth is like what you just said. I just took this new position at the district level, and I have a lot of responsibility. I have a lot of people that I'm responsible for, and the job requires someone to be there. And it's not a thing where you can just set up something for this school year and expect that it happens next year. It's going to build on itself. And I saw that, okay, Sonya, you're just going into this particular district and you're you're a part of the policy changes that are going on within the district. What are you going to do next year? I said, they were like, Miss Atkinson, we want you to stay. We want you to stay. We need for you to stay. And I saw that. I saw that there was a need for me to be there next school year. But then there was also a need for me to start looking at my life and start making some changes in my life or pouring into my life. I saw that I could pour into the district and I can help them out and I can be a positive change and I can be a consistent person there within the district. But then that part of me that was really ready to retire kept talking, kept raising her head saying, what about me? What about me? And that voice kind of overrode everything else. And eventually I decided to say, you know what? I'm going to retire. And you can ask my kids every day. I was going back and forth. Am I going to retire? Do I do another year? And I finally said yes. I finally said yes to me. And I shared with a therapist that called me yesterday to inquire about some things for next school year. Even though I'm not going to be there, I shared with her that the choice that I made was really for me. It was not because, I didn't want the job, I couldn't do the job, or the job was too hard. It was something that I felt I had to do for myself. And I do have retirement guilt. I do, and what retirement guilt is when you know that there is a job that needs to be done and you know that you're the person that can do it, or your ability to do the job. Somebody will come and replace me. But knowing that there's still work left to do, I kind of feel like I'm leaving before the job is completed. But one thing that has kept coming back to me this school year is that the job will never be finished. There will always be something left on the table. And that hopefully I've taken my responsibility and I've done so much to move the bar that whoever comes behind me can continue on that track. that, and really to say to myself, you're not all that. You that, but you're not all that.
Okay.
Somebody else will come behind you, and they will be that. And then somebody else will come behind them, and they will be that. Because education will continue long after I'm gone from this earth. So,
and that's true.
Yeah.
You mentioned retirement guilt, and a little while ago I was speaking with a gentleman who said that, hey, if anybody wants to know how to do absolutely nothing during retirement, to come see him. Do you think that retirement guilt is something that plagues women more than men? Are we the ones, because we're naturally seen as givers? Do you think that women suffer with retirement guilt more than men do?
I think it's a type. I'm a service person, so I service people. And if you are that type of person, whether you're male or female, you always have the need to go out and help someone, to give. And when you decide to give to yourself, that's where the guilt comes in. I know it shouldn't, but that's where the guilt comes in, because by your nature, your very DNA, you are giving to other people. When you go against what's natural for you and decide, I think I need to give to myself, that's where the guilt comes in. But I was reminded of the procedures on the airplane. When you get on the airplane, they always talk about, what happens in the time if there's a crash, and you have to cover yourself with the oxygen mask. And you do that first so you can help the person next to you. And that's really how life is, even though we often don't think about that when we're giving, because we will give so much of ourselves till we are depleted, and we'll still keep giving because somebody still wants, somebody still needs, and we'll still keep giving. We're sick, we're tired, we're hurt, we're lonely, we're sad, and we'll put on a smile and we'll still keep giving. And at some point, we have to have a safety valve for ourselves where the mask comes off, we breathe in the oxygen, we live, we thrive so that we can live again. And so we can continue to be servants, but at the same time, we have to learn how to serve ourselves. So I think that retirement guilt is that person who really sees that there's still a job that needs to be done. I don't think it's male versus female, but I do agree with you that women are nurturers. And I don't know if I'm being sexist one way or the other, but I just think we are naturally like that. But this whole thing in terms of retirement guilt, I think it just depends on that person, because some people can walk away. They can walk away with tons of projects on the table, and some people can't. Just imagine walking away from children, and that's who we deal with. We deal with kids, and we know that that particular kid may need us next year because we have been their sole purpose this year for them coming to school, because nobody else may care. But I know I can go to Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, and just a word of encouragement, just a smile. And when that person decides to leave, it's like, okay, how am I going to feel? How is that kid going to be affected by that?
It's amazing. You shared that it is really a part of a person's nature. Not necessarily that it's a genetic thing or anything like that, but that it is part of a person's nature when they decide that they're going to look out for themselves. I think one of the things that is amazing to me about being an educator is that a lot of people would like to say that when you are an educator, you automatically have a certain disposition. But I've been an educator for 25 years, and I'm one of those who will be there until the sun goes down. And I will watch people, they're supposed to leave at a certain time. A minute before time, they want to make sure they're in their cars so that when that time comes, they're out of there. So yeah, it's not necessarily something that's given maybe to women or to educators in particular. It is about that individual and what's their natural intent. So you walked away, and prior to walking away, you decided to solidify your legacy by writing a book. Okay, so tell us about that process. What compelled you to write a book when you knew that you wouldn't be the one to necessarily deliver it or facilitate it to others?
That's a funny thing. When I put this idea, when this idea came to me, at that time, I knew I was going to be working until next year. leadership certification expires in 2019. And I was like, why not wait until 2019? I still have another year on my certification. So at the time I started putting my thoughts to paper, I really had decided, okay, I'm going to work another year. Well, the way the book came about, which the name of the book is Are You Ready for School? A school-based resource guide for the school-based therapist, a resource guide for the school speech pathologist, I'm sorry. The way the book came about was I discovered that a lot of speech therapists knew their craft. They knew speech pathology. They knew speech therapy in and out. They could remediate a communication deficit with their eyes closed. But coming into the school system is a whole different environment. In the school systems, you have to know special education law. And if you don't know special education law, you're going to be lost, because everything is about policy and procedures. And you have to follow those in order to test students, in order to serve students. But you're within a group of people who want you to do things when they want you to do things. And they may not necessarily know what the rules are. For instance, a teacher may say to a speech therapist, well, he can't talk. You need to serve him. And if you know your craft, you say, oh, yeah, you can look at a kid and kind of discern that something is wrong and feel that you might be able to assist the student. Well, your very nature may say, oh, let me go ahead and work with this kid. In reality, in the school system, you can't. Everything we do is governed by rules and regulations. But a lot of therapists coming into the school system have worked in private practice. They've worked in hospitals. They worked in hospice or other avenues, and they've never really had the opportunity to work in a school system, and they don't know all of the rules and regulations. And I found myself as a compliance specialist constantly sharing with my team, this is what you're supposed to do in this situation. This is what you're supposed to do in this situation. And I can, if you're one of my therapists, you and I are talking, you would get it, you and I talking. But then you go back into the school setting and you're bombarded by differing opinions from maybe the psychologist or the special ed teacher or the principal or the parent, and they're all telling you different things from their perspective. Mm-hmm. And it might be true from their perspective, because the information that they have is related to who they are and their experiences. And you're the speech therapist and you are listening to all these different persons. And a lot of times our therapists are they're overwhelmed and they're burnt out. So my idea for the book was really to put all these things into one place. Like I said, it's a resource guide. It allows the speech therapist, whether they're in school, whether they're newly graduates, or if they're just coming back into the school system from private practice, an opportunity to experience all these things with an even ground. You know how to, it'll give you information about how to integrate into a school community. Because when we go into a school community, you have all of your teachers, and the teachers are broken down by grade level, but then they're all teachers. But then you have kindergarten through 5th grade, and they have a close-knit bond. And then you have your administrative staff. Even though you have a special ed staff, there's only one speech therapist in that building. Mm. And nobody does what the speech therapist can do. And nobody really understands that role. So I was like, maybe if I can provide you with a resource guide, it will be something that you can pick up and you'll know exactly what to do. In order to integrate into the school environment, there's a chapter that talks about some things that you're going to encounter. Because even though I heard about this as an undergrad student, that, they'll give you a closet as a place to work. I mean, we're talking about 1980. Here we are in 2018, and people are still encountering that. This book will kind of give you an idea of what can you do when faced with something like that, when no one knows where your working station is going to be or they haven't thought about it. How do you do referrals? What is a referral? How do I interact with parents who feel that students, their child needs to be in speech and not understand the entire process of referral? It talks about eligibility, it talks about IEP, how to hold or conduct an IEP meeting. It talks about dismissal. It gives you a lot of those little must-haves, like things you need to have and terminology that you will encounter in terms of FTE, like what is FTE? I think it's full-time equivalent weight. And those are things you just don't hear on the outside. But when you come into the school, you immediately need to know. It's not even one of those things where somebody is going to mentor you and say, hey, I'll help you. No. Coming into education, especially special education, is like getting on the freeway. You know what I'm saying? It's an on-ramp. It's not a little side ramp that allow you to ease in. It is an on-ramp into traffic, and you're expected to hit the ground running. And hopefully this guide, this is a survival guide for the school-based speech therapists, will allow those speech therapists coming into the school system to have their own manual so that they're not so lost.
Okay, so with your level of expertise, it's no wonder that people wanted you to commit another year. I mean, you have this opportunity, you go to the district level, you're working in an area where you're able to supervise other speech therapists and to lend your expertise to it. So clearly I can understand the retirement guilt, the going back and forth, trying to decide this, that, or the other. And so you're at a place now, you have retired, but then you also have this extension of your expertise through the book. So what are some possible next steps for you as you look at how you can still be of a service to those who have not retired?
That's smile at that, because this book just blew up. I started writing as a part of writing for a workshop I was having with a therapist. And I kept writing, and it became, I finally said, this is like a resource guide. I'm going to put it together and get it published. So my idea with the book was to really send it out to the colleges, because I think that's where that level of understanding needs to be had. That there needs to be a level there needs to be an understanding at the college level that therapists need this type of training in order to be successful in the schools. So that was the idea, and now it seems like it has this life of its own. Of course, it's people are purchasing it, but what I feel blossoming is bigger than speech, because what I know what happens in the school system. People assume because I'm the speech therapist that I can solve this problem. Because I'm the speech therapist, this kid has a communication deficit, I can solve this problem. What I feel is that we are a community of educators, and we can solve this problem. And I don't think, for whatever reason, we have separated as educators. We have general ed, and even in special education, we have autism, we have interrelated teachers that may do different things, we have EBD teachers, the emotional behavior disorder teachers, we have our intellectual, everybody's separated, and everyone assumes that it's somebody else's responsibility to do this thing. Communication is not something that happens 30 minutes twice a week. Communication happens all the time. And in order for us to have effective communicators, we need to work together. And what I'm sensing is that this is becoming, for me, an evolution of education. That it is something that starts at the college level, where those courses our courses need to be intertwined. So that if you are a general ed teacher, you need to learn about special ed, not just in one course, because you're going to encounter the way the world is going. We're pushing our students more to be all on one accord. We do have kids that graduate with, a non-general ed degree, for lack of a better word. But for the most part, all of our children are getting general ed diplomas. And if all of our children are getting general ed diplomas, why are we so divisive on this end when we're training the educators? On this end, we need to come together so that when we start sending out graduates from the collegiate level, we're sending out graduates that are able to work with a scope of students. This special ed kid is not just her student. He can come into my science class, or he can go in your social studies class. He doesn't necessarily just have to go into the music class. And I think that's where, even though this is a resource guide, it's a resource guide to help the therapists coming in understand special ed. But what I'm understanding as a result of this book is that there is a lack of continuity between the disciplines, that we don't exist cohesively as educators to educate students. We have been taught to work in silos, and I think we need to come together. And I want to be able to go into colleges or at a college level and talk about that. How can we get on one accord so that we'll have more educators? We don't have enough teachers to teach because we're looking for different types of teachers. What if every teacher that came out of a College of Education program was able to work with any student?
Wow.
Then we would have enough teachers to teach the masses of students, because we're asking our students to be in line with everyone. It's no longer really special ed. We want our kids to be in line and graduate with similar degrees, even though the diplomas that they're coming out are different levels. Everyone is asked to be on this track. If we're asking all of our children to be on this track, let's ask all our educators to be on this track so that we can then educate all students.
That is an amazing assessment of what you got from this book, and just the dialogue that came from putting the book out there, allowing others to read it, and getting their feedback. I know for myself, being in education for the 25 years that I've been in education, and learning things about people who work down the hall from me or who work in a different department, and how that can impact. We hear the catchphrases, interdisciplinary learning, and doing all of those different things, but the drive behind it is not as great as, or the actions behind it are not as great as the talk. So it's awesome that you do see the opportunity to not necessarily just reach out to speech therapists, but to reach out to educators as a whole and really appeal to those who are training future teachers that you need to be diverse in your learning. You need to be well equipped and balanced, and knowing that what you do in your particular area cannot really develop the child wholly if you're not aware of these other factors, and if you're not working connected to other folks. So you've got these ideas, and you say what you're going to do on the next level. How long does it take someone, and I know you're just 9 days in, but how long do you think it will take you before you are tired of just being retired?
I don't think, and I think that's the beauty of it. I went into retirement knowing that there were other things that I was going to do. That I love to test. I'm an evaluator. I love diagnostics. So I was like, I can test anybody. So that is something that I'm looking forward to. I'm an advocate. I love, sitting in rooms with parents, assisting them in these special ed meetings. I love doing that. So that is already on the table. I think even though I retired last Wednesday, I think I'm over it. My son was like, "You're supposed to be retired." I don't think I am anymore, because now the work is being done for the next thing. I'm still working on doing some things with the book, making sure that I don't, I've done the work, I've published it, I've done that, let it take care of itself, making sure that runs. But preparing for the fall is what I want to do in terms of some school projects that I want to do. So yeah, I don't see it as retirement. I think for me, retirement means I don't have to get up and go to work. Like last year, not this past school year, but last school year, 16, 17, I had to go to work, and I had to put my finger on a button and I had to press the button in. I had to, in order to go to work. Yeah. This past year, I just had to show up. So retirement for me means I don't have a place to be at a particular time. And it was so weird. I woke up one morning and I said, oh my God, I don't have structure. Because working is a very structured thing.
Yes.
And it gives you something to do. You don't have to think about what you have to do. The next morning you get up, you got to be a place at a certain time. You can only take an hour lunch. And we get used to that. And it's a comfortable thing because, hey, I know where I'm supposed to be. I woke up one morning, I was like, I don't have any structure. And then I realized I said life is structure. You know, you structure your life. You have an opportunity to structure your own life. So I'm like, okay, so I'm retired, but I'm working on those other. I'm not that retired person who's sitting at home and trying to figure it out. No, I've given a lot to others, and I've kind of set myself on the back burner for a minute. And there's just a lot of things I want to do. So maybe after I click off a couple of those things, you know, then I could say I've retired. But right now, I think I need to work on me.
Okay. As we get ready to close, I keep in the back of my head something that a famous choreographer and producer shared with me some months ago, as she stated that you're never truly retired, that when you have spent so many years in a career that you have a skill set that no one else has, that you have something to contribute that no one else can contribute, and so you redefine who you are and what you're going to do. But as she said, one of her closest friends told her that you only retire when you're dead. And that you have to keep pressing and keep moving because of what you have to offer others. So for those of us who are making those plans in our head of what retirement is going to be like, what would be your lasting words for us as we wrap our minds around not dying, but just retiring from education or from a particular career that we've been in for so many years?
I would think, as a newly retired person, that your thoughts going into retirement are not to, and it sounds like so selfish, not to serve others, because you've spent the majority of your life serving others. You should begin by serving yourself, and I say that meaning that you should find out what it is that you want, what it is that you want, not what other people want from you, because trust and believe, when people found out I was retired, they're like, oh yeah, you could pick up the kids, and you could do this, and you could do that, and you could, I don't want to do that. One of the things that I've learned from this whole thing, and my son said it to me, he said, your generation lives a scripted life. And he said, we go to school, high school, some people go to college. He said, but at the end of the day, you get a job, you work for 30, 40, 50 years, and then you work till you can't work no more, and you're sick and you're tired and you die. It's a scripted life. What I don't want to live is a scripted life anymore. And what I suggest to other people, don't live a scripted life. Find out what it is that you want to do in life and live that life. Okay. Follow your heart.
All right. So we're not going to find ourselves living a scripted life. I want to encourage those of you who are close to retirement to understand that, yes, it's one of the big changes in life, but in living a scripted life, you anticipate a thing to go a particular way. And that is not what Sonya is encouraging us to do. She is encouraging us to look at it as an opportunity to just be concerned about self, and being concerned about self in that there's nothing that you're mandated to do. You don't have the 9 to 5. You don't have necessarily the children that you're still raising. You don't have to clock in. But what you do have to do is to make sure that those days beyond the clocking in and the 9 to 5 are filled with things that fulfill you, that fulfill self, that bring a smile to your face beyond the career. So to end another episode of Surviving Change, I want to encourage you to embrace that change, but to embrace that change knowing that the best is yet to come. Thank you. Thanks to my guest, Sonya Atkinson. And until we come back, continue to survive change.